The great hall was silent. It was the kind of silence that pressed against the ears and made the heart beat faster. Admiral Grace Mitchell stood in the center of the massive chamber, her wrists bound by glowing energy chains. She was 52 years old, and she had seen many strange things in her life. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. The chamber was enormous. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that shifted colors every few seconds. Blue, then purple, then a deep red that reminded Grace of blood. 12 enormous platforms floated in a circle around her, and on each platform sat a creature that was not human. Grace had studied the files. She knew their names and their species, but seeing them in person was different. The one called Vorath was the largest. He was an insectoid being, standing nearly 15 feet tall. His body was covered in black armor that looked like it was part of his skin. His eyes, all 6 of them, were fixed on Grace with an expression that might have been curiosity or hunger. The other 11 were equally strange. There was a creature made entirely of floating rocks held together by some invisible force. Another looked like a giant jellyfish, its transparent body filled with swirling lights. A third resembled a snake, but with dozens of arms extending from its long body. These were the rulers of the galaxy, the Galactic Council. They had controlled known space for 3,000 years. Their word was law. Their judgment was final. And today, they were judging humanity. Grace kept her back straight. She was a soldier. She had fought in 2 wars and commanded the largest fleet Earth had ever built. She would not show fear. Not to these creatures. Not ever. Vorath raised one of his many arms, and the chamber fell even more silent, if that was possible. When he spoke, his voice was like thunder mixed with the sound of breaking glass. Human, you stand before the Galactic Council as a representative of your species. You have been brought here to hear our judgment. Grace said nothing. She simply stared back at him. Another creature spoke. This one was the jellyfish-like being, and its voice was soft, almost musical. We have watched your kind for 2 of your centuries. We have observed your growth, your expansion, your nature. And what have you concluded? Grace asked. Her voice was calm and steady. The rock creature rumbled. You are dangerous. You spread like a disease. You consume resources without thought. You fight among yourselves, and yet you also unite against outside threats with terrifying speed. Grace almost smiled. Thank you. The council members shifted uncomfortably. They had not expected gratitude. Vorath leaned forward, his massive head casting a shadow over Grace. You misunderstand, human. These are not compliments. These are charges. Your species has colonized 17 worlds in 200 years. You have developed weapons that should have taken you millennia to create. You breed quickly. You adapt even more quickly. You are unpredictable. We are survivors, Grace replied. That is what we do. We survive. Not anymore, said the snake creature. Its many arms moved in a pattern that might have been a shrug. The council has voted. The decision is unanimous. Grace felt her heart freeze, but she did not let it show on her face. What decision? Vorath stood to his full height. The chamber seemed to grow darker around him. Extinction Protocol Omega. Your planet will be sterilized. Your colonies will be destroyed. Every human in the galaxy will be eliminated. Your species will cease to exist. The words hung in the air like poison. Grace had known this was possible. She had suspected it from the moment the council ships had surrounded Earth and demanded a representative. But hearing it spoken aloud was different. It made it real. Why? She asked. Her voice did not shake. We have done nothing to you. We have not attacked any council species. We have not broken any of your laws. You exist, Varth replied simply. That is enough. We've seen what happens when species like yours are allowed to grow. You expand. You consume. Eventually, you challenge. We will not wait for that day. We will end the threat before it begins. The jellyfish creature spoke again, its tone almost apologetic. It is not personal, human. It is simply mathematics. The probability of your species becoming a threat within the next 1,000 years is 97%. Those odds are unacceptable. Grace looked around at the 12 beings who had just sentenced her entire species to death. She saw no sympathy in their alien eyes. No doubt, no mercy. To them, this was just business. A problem to be solved. A pest to be eliminated. When? She asked. Your planet has 6 of your months, Vorth answered. We are not cruel. We will give your people time to prepare, to say goodbye, to make peace with whatever gods you believe in. Grace nodded slowly. 6 months. It was not much time. But it was something. And me? She asked. What happens to me? Varth made a sound that might have been a laugh. You will be returned to your planet. Consider it a courtesy. You will be able to watch the end alongside your people. You will be able to see the sky burn. The energy chains around her wrists disappeared. Grace rubbed the places where they had been, feeling the ghost of their pressure on her skin. Take her away, Vorth commanded. 2 guards appeared. They were tall, thin creatures with gray skin and empty black eyes. They grabbed Grace by the arms and began to lead her out of the chamber, but at the doorway, she stopped. She turned back to face the council one last time. You made a mistake today, she said. A voice echoed through the massive hall. Vorth tilted his head. Oh, and what mistake is that? Grace smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a wolf showing its teeth. You gave us 6 months. You should have killed us immediately. Now we have time. And when humans have time, we plan. We build. We fight. She paused, letting her words sink in. Enjoy these 6 months, Council. They will be the last peaceful months you ever know. The guards dragged her away before anyone could respond. But Grace had seen the looks on their faces. For just a moment, some of them had looked uncertain, almost afraid the transport ship was cold and gray. Grace sat alone in a small cell, her hands folded in her lap. The guards had left her unbound. They did not consider her a threat. After all, what could one human woman do against the might of the Galactic Council? Everything, Grace thought. I can do everything. She waited until the ship entered hyperspace. Then she pressed her hand against her neck, feeling for the small bump beneath her skin. The transmitter was still there. They had not found it during their scans. Human technology was too primitive for them to recognize. That was their second mistake. Grace activated the device with a thought. It sent a single message, broadcast on a frequency that only human receivers could detect. The message traveled faster than light, reaching every human colony in the galaxy within minutes. The message was simple. They're coming. We have 6 months. Make them count. Then, Grace leaned back against the cold wall of her cell and closed her eyes. She thought about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests, about the cities full of people who had no idea what was coming, but they would know soon. And when they did, they would fight, because that was what humans did. They fought. They struggled. They survived. The Council had made their decision. They had chosen war. Now they would learn what that meant. The message arrived at midnight, Earth time. Within 1 hour, every government on the planet knew the truth. Within 2 hours, the panic began. Within 3 hours, the leaders of every nation gathered for the most important meeting in human history. Grace Mitchell stood before them. She had landed just 30 minutes ago, and she had not slept in 3 days. That there was no time for rest. There would be no time for rest ever again. 6 months, she told them. That is all we have. The Council fleet will arrive, and they will try to kill every single one of us. Man, woman, and child. They will not stop until humanity is extinct. The room was silent. Presidents and prime ministers stared at her with wide eyes. Some looked ready to cry. Others looked ready to fight. A few looked like they wanted to run and hide. We cannot run, Grace continued, reading their thoughts on their faces. We cannot hide. We cannot surrender. There is only one option left to us. She slammed her fist on the table. We fight. We fight with everything we have. We fight until we win or until we die. There is no middle ground. The preparations began that very night. On Mars, Commander Jake Rivera received his orders at 4 in the morning. He was a big man with dark hair and tired eyes. He had spent 20 years building colonies on the Red Planet. Now, he would spend his last months building something very different. Underground bunkers, he told his team. Deep enough to survive orbital bombardment. Wide enough to hold 200,000 people. We need them ready in 5 months. His chief engineer, a woman named Rachel, shook her head. That is impossible. The timeline alone. I do not care about impossible, Jake interrupted. I care about survival. Get it done. The drilling began within 12 hours. 3 shifts, working around the clock. The workers lived on coffee, energy bars, and pure determination. They did not complain. They did not ask for breaks. They knew what was at stake. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Emily Park was having the strangest conversation of her life. She was a quantum physicist, one of the best in the world. She had spent her career studying things that most people could not even imagine. Particles that existed in 2 places at once. Energy that could be created from nothing. The very fabric of reality itself. Now she was being asked to break that reality. A shield, Grace said, showing her the classified files. The Council's weapons are powerful, but they follow the normal laws of physics. If we can create something that does not follow those laws, something that sends their attacks somewhere else entirely, Emily held up her hand. You are talking about displacing matter and energy into a parallel dimension. We have theories about this, yes. But to actually build it, can it be done? Emily was quiet for a long moment. She thought about her daughter, who was 7 years old. She thought about the little girl's smile, her laugh, the way she looked when she was sleeping. Yes, Emily finally said. It can be done. I will need the best scientists on the planet. I will need unlimited resources. And I will need everyone to leave me alone and let me work. You will have all of that, Grace promised. Just give us the shield. In the dark waters of the Pacific Ocean, Captain Tom Walsh was gathering his fleet. He was 60 years old, with gray hair and a face full of scars. He had been fighting since he was 18. He had never lost a battle, but he had also never faced anything like this. 42 ships, he said to his officers, looking at the holographic display. That is what we have. 42 ships against 3,000. Nobody spoke. The numbers were simply too terrible. The Council thinks this will be easy, Tom continued. They think we are weak, primitive. They think we will run or surrender. He smiled, and it was not a nice smile. They are wrong. He pulled up another display. This one showed weapon designs. Railguns, he said. Simple projectiles, accelerated to near light speed. Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons. They have never faced kinetic projectiles moving this fast. Each hit will tear through their ships like paper. His weapons officer, a young man named Mike, leaned forward. What about stealth? Can we hide from their sensors? Tom nodded. Our ships are small. We can coat them with materials that absorb their scanning frequencies. They will not see us until we are right on top of them. The officers looked at each other. For the first time, there was hope in their eyes. We are not going to win by being stronger, Tom told them. We are going to win by being smarter, by being more clever, by fighting in ways they do not expect. He stood up, his old bones creaking. Get to work. We have a war to win. Far away from the military preparations, on a small colony world called New Austin, a farmer named David Cole was having his own conversation. David was not a soldier. He was 45 years old, with a wife and 3 children. He grew wheat and corn on 100 acres of land. He had never fired a weapon in his life, but he had listened to his grandmother's stories. Stories about World War III, when Earth had almost destroyed itself. Stories about survival, about resistance, about never giving up. The military will fight in space, he told the other farmers gathered in his barn. But what happens if some of the aliens land? What happens if they come to our homes, our towns, our fields? An old woman named Betty spoke up. We fight them here. David nodded. Exactly. We need to organize. We need to train. We need to turn every farm, every house, every building into a fortress. A young man laughed nervously. We are farmers. What do we know about fighting? David looked at him steadily. We know this land. We know every hill, every river, every hidden valley. We know how to work together. We know how to survive hard times. He paused. That is more than enough. The resistance began that night. Farmers learned to shoot. Teachers learned to make bombs. Doctors learned battlefield medicine. Everyone had a role. Everyone had a purpose, because everyone had something to fight for. Back at the Council's home world, High Arbiter Vorath was watching the reports come in. He sat in his private chamber, surrounded by screens showing images from Earth and its colonies. He saw the bunkers being built on Mars. He saw the fleets gathering near Jupiter. He saw the strange energy readings coming from Earth's Antarctic region. His advisor, a small creature with too many eyes, spoke nervously. They are preparing, High Arbiter. Should we attack early? Vorath made a clicking sound that meant amusement. Let them prepare. Let them build their little walls and sharpen their little sticks. It will make no difference. He waved a limb at the screens. Look at them, scurrying around like insects. Do they truly believe they can stop us? Our fleet has destroyed 100 species. Our weapons have shattered worlds. What are humans compared to that? The advisor nodded, but he did not look convinced. They are unusual, High Arbiter. They adapt faster than any species we have seen. And there are reports of strange technologies, things we do not understand. Vorath turned all 6 of his eyes on the advisor. You are afraid of them. I am. Cautious. Vorath stood, his massive body blocking out the light. I will tell you what humans are. They are animals. Clever animals, yes. Dangerous animals, perhaps. But still animals. And animals can be killed. He looked back at the screens, watching the tiny figures working, building, preparing. Let them struggle. It will make the extermination more satisfying. And somewhere in the Antarctic, surrounded by machines and equations, Dr. Emily Park was making history. The shield generator hummed with energy. Numbers scrolled across her screen. Her team worked in silence, knowing that they were doing something that should have been impossible. Emily thought about her daughter again. She thought about the future she wanted to give her. Then she got back to work, because in 6 months, the enemy would come, and humanity would be ready. The sky above Earth turned dark at exactly noon on a Tuesday. 3,000 ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. They blocked out the sun, casting shadows across entire continents. Each ship was massive, some of them larger than cities. Their hulls were black and smooth, covered with weapons that glowed with terrible energy. People on the ground looked up and saw death. Fleet Commander Zorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue planet below. He was an old soldier, one of Arth's most trusted commanders. He had destroyed 17 species in his long career. This would be his 18th. "Scan the planet," he ordered. "Find their military targets, their cities, their bunkers." His officers worked quickly. Numbers appeared on the main screen. 8 billion life forms detected. Major population centers identified. Military installations located. Zorath nodded. "Open a channel to the planet." The communication officer pressed a button. "Channel open, Commander." Zorath's voice boomed across every radio, every television, every phone on Earth. "Humans. This is Fleet Commander Zorath of the Galactic Council. Your extinction has been ordered. You have 1 hour to make peace with your gods. Then the cleansing will begin." He closed the channel and turned to his weapons officer. "Begin charging the primary batteries. Target the largest cities first. New York, London, Tokyo, Beijing." "Yes, Commander." Zorath allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction. This would be quick, clean, professional. But humans had no real fleet to speak of. No weapons that could threaten his ships. They were helpless, or so he thought. Deep inside the Antarctic base, Emily Park was watching the same sky. Her heart was beating fast, but her hands were steady as she worked the controls. "The shield generator is ready," her assistant reported. "Power levels at maximum." Emily nodded. "Wait for my signal. We need them to fire first." "Why?" "Because they need to see that their weapons are useless. They need to feel fear." Above, Zorath gave the order. "Fire." Thousands of missiles launched from the Council ships. They streaked toward Earth like falling stars, each one carrying enough power to destroy a mountain. The first targets were the major cities. Millions of people would die in the first minute. The missiles entered the atmosphere and vanished. Zorath blinked all 4 of his eyes. What happened? Where did they go? His officers scrambled to check their instruments. "Unknown, Commander." The missiles just disappeared. No explosions. No debris. They simply ceased to exist. "That is impossible." Fire again. More missiles launched. Thousands more. They fell toward Earth with deadly purpose. And again, they vanished. Every single one. On the ground, Emily Park let out a breath she did not know she was holding. "It works," she whispered. "It actually works." Her assistant was staring at the readings in disbelief. "Where are the missiles going?" "Another dimension. A parallel universe. I do not know which one, and I do not care." Emily smiled grimly. "All that matters is they are not here." Zorath was starting to panic. He had fired more weapons in the last 5 minutes than most fleets used in an entire war. And none of them had done any damage. "Switch to energy weapons," he commanded. "Destroy the atmosphere. Burn the oceans." The great ships turned their most powerful cannons toward Earth. Beams of pure destruction lanced down from space, each one carrying enough energy to boil a sea. The beams hit the shield and scattered like light through a prism, spreading harmlessly across the sky. Now, Zorath was truly afraid. And then humanity struck back. Captain Tom Walsh had been waiting behind Luna, the Earth's moon, with his entire fleet. 42 small ships, hidden in the shadow where the Council scanners could not reach. "All ships," he said calmly, "fire at will." The railguns roared to life. Each one fired a simple tungsten rod, but those rods were moving at 90% the speed of light. At that velocity, a piece of metal the size of a baseball carried more energy than a nuclear bomb. The first volley hit the Council fleet before they knew what was happening. Ships exploded. Shields meant to stop energy weapons shattered against the kinetic impacts. 400 vessels died in the first minute, torn apart from the inside out. Zorath watched in horror as his fleet burned around him. What is this? What are they using? Projectile weapons, Commander. Metal rods. No energy signature to detect. But that is primitive? That is, another volley hit. Another 300 ships died. Tom Walsh pressed his attack. His small fleet weaved between the massive council ships, striking fast and disappearing before the enemy could react. The council gunners tried to target them, but the human ships were too small, too quick, too hard to see. They have some kind of coating, a council officer reported. Our sensors cannot lock onto them. Then use visual targeting. Zorath screamed. They are too fast, Commander. The battle lasted 9 hours. It was the longest 9 hours in human history. Captain Tom Walsh lost 31 of his 42 ships. 18,000 humans died, their vessels torn apart by Council weapons that eventually found their marks. But the Council lost 2,400 ships, over 3 million soldiers, a quarter of their entire extermination fleet. When it was over, the surviving Council ships retreated to the outer edge of the solar system. Zorath sat on his damaged bridge, unable to believe what had happened. They heard us, he said quietly. The humans actually heard us. His communications officer approached nervously. Commander, we are receiving a message from the human fleet. Put it through. A face appeared on the screen. It was a woman, middle-aged, with blood on her forehead and fire in her eyes. Captain Kate Morrison, one of the few human captains still alive. Council fleet, she said, her voice cold and hard. We destroyed a quarter of your ships today. We lost good people, good friends. So hear me now. She leaned closer to the camera. Come at us again. We dare you. We will make you bleed for every inch. We will make you pay for every life. And when this is over, when we have beaten you, we will remember what you tried to do to us. She paused. This was just the beginning. You have no idea what we are capable of. The transmission ended. Zorath sat in silence for a long moment. Then he opened a channel to the home world. Hi, Arbiter. This is Fleet Commander Zorath. I have bad news. Back on Earth, the celebration was short. There was no time for long speeches or parties. Emily Park returned to her laboratory to improve the shield. Jake Rivera continued building his bunkers on Mars. David Cole kept training his farmers. And Admiral Grace Mitchell stood in her command center, looking at the casualty reports. 18,000 dead. 31 ships lost. It was the greatest victory in human history, but it was also a warning. They will come back, she said to her officers, with more ships, more weapons, more determination. Today we surprised them. Tomorrow they will be ready. She turned to face her people. We need to be readier. We need to hit them before they can hit us. We need to take this fight to their territory. Captain Kate Morrison stepped forward. She was injured, tired, and covered in the grime of battle. But she was still standing. What do you have in mind, Admiral? Grace smiled that Wolf smile again. Operation Prometheus. We stop playing defense. We start playing offense. We make them so afraid that they never threaten another species again. The officers nodded. They were soldiers. They understood. The first battle was over. The real war was about to begin. The Galactic Council was in chaos. High Arbiter Varth stood in the Great Chamber, surrounded by the other 11 Council members. They were all talking at once, their voices mixing into a storm of anger and fear. This is a disaster, screamed the rock creature. We lost a quarter of our fleet to primitives. Primitives. We should retreat, the jellyfish being suggested, its lights flickering nervously. Cut our losses. Leave the humans alone. Leave them alone? Vara's voice cut through the noise like a blade. After what they did? After they humiliated us? No, we will destroy them. Every last one. The snake creature spoke, its many arms waving. But how? Our weapons do not work. Our sensors cannot track them. They fight like nothing we have ever seen. Vorath slammed his armored fist against the floor. The entire chamber shook. We will send everything. Every ship in council space. 15,000 vessels. Let them try to stop that. The other council members exchanged nervous glances. 15,000 ships was their entire military force. If something went wrong, do it, Vorath commanded. I want the humans erased from existence. No more delays. No more caution. Total annihilation. The order was given. Across the galaxy, council fleets began to gather. It would take time to bring them all together, but when they arrived at Earth, nothing would survive Dot, or so they believed. But humanity had not been waiting. Operation Prometheus was already in motion. Agent Lisa Taylor was the first to strike. She was 35 years old, small and quiet, with a face that people forgot the moment she walked away. She was perfect for her job. 3 weeks after the first battle, she landed on Nexus Station, the heart of the Council's government. Her ship was disguised as a cargo vessel, and she carried papers identifying her as a traitor from a neutral species. Nobody gave her a second look. Over the next 2 days, she mapped every inch of the station. She found the power core, a massive reactor buried deep in the station's center. She found the communication arrays. She found the security headquarters. On the third night, she planted her charges. The explosions were beautiful. First, the power core, sending ripples of darkness across the station as lights went out section by section. Then the communication arrays, cutting the station off from the rest of the galaxy. Then the security headquarters, trapping the guards in their own building. Lisa walked through the chaos like a ghost. Nobody stopped her. Nobody even saw her. By the time the council realized what had happened, she was already gone. Engineer Mark Evans hit next. He was a skinny man with glasses and a nervous laugh. He did not look dangerous. That was what made him so effective. His target was the Council's communication network. For 3,000 years, the Council had used the same basic system, the same frequencies, the same codes. They had never needed to change anything, because nobody had ever challenged them. Mark changed that. He had spent months studying their signals, learning their patterns, understanding their weaknesses. And now, sitting in a small ship orbiting a dead moon, he put his knowledge to use. He started with music. Every council ship, every station, every command center suddenly heard the same thing. Human war songs. Drums and guitars and voices singing about battle and victory and never giving up. The council tried to shut it down. They could not. Mark was using their own systems against them, bouncing signals through their own satellites. Every time they blocked one frequency, he switched to another. What is this noise? Zorath demanded, covering his ears. Human music, Commander. We cannot stop it. For 3 days, the Council fleet could not communicate without hearing those songs. Their officers could not sleep. Their soldiers grew nervous and angry. Morale crumbled. And then Dr. Emily Park delivered her final gift. She had spent months working on the virus. It was not designed to kill. That was important. Humanity did not want to commit genocide. They wanted to win. The virus targeted specific biological markers found only in Council species. It attacked the nervous system, causing weakness, confusion, and fever. Victims recovered after a few weeks, but during that time, they were useless. Emily had found a way to spread it through the Council's own air recycling systems. Within days, it was everywhere. 70% of Council military personnel fell ill. Ships drifted without crews to man them. Stations went dark without officers to run them. The great war machine of the Galactic Council ground to a halt. Vareth himself was not spared. He lay in his medical chamber, his body burning with fever, while reports of the disaster piled up around him. How? He whispered. How are they doing this? His advisor, equally sick, could only shake his head. They are humans, High Arbiter. This is what they do. Despite everything, the Council gathered their fleet. 15,000 ships, many of them running on skeleton crews, many of them barely operational. But they were still powerful. They were still dangerous. And they were coming for Earth. Admiral Grace Mitchell watched them approach. Her sensors showed the massive fleet, spreading across space like a wall of death. Even with all their losses, even with all their sick soldiers, the Council still had more ships than humanity had people in uniform. Admiral, her communications officer said. Incoming message from the enemy fleet. Put it through. Zoreth's face appeared on the screen. He looked terrible, his eyes sunken and his armor dull. But his voice was steady. Human, you have fought well. But this ends now. We have brought every ship we have. Your tricks will not save you. Grace nodded slowly. You are right. We cannot beat you with tricks alone. She stood up, her eyes never leaving the screen. That is why we are going to beat you with everything. Every ship. Every weapon. Every man and woman willing to fight. You want a war? Fine. Let us end this. She cut the transmission and turned to her officers. All ships, advance. Target their command vessels first. And someone tell Kate Morrison she is cleared to use the special weapons. The second great battle began. Captain Kate Morrison led the attack. Her ship, the Defiance II, was the fastest vessel in the human fleet. She dove straight into the heart of the Council formation, her weapons blazing. Behind her came the rest of humanity's rebuilt fleet. 100 ships now, built in secret factories and crewed by volunteers. They were still outnumbered. They were still outgunned, but they were not afraid. The battle raged for hours. Ships exploded on both sides. People died screaming, their vessels torn apart by weapons that did not care about honor or mercy. Kate fought like a woman possessed. She destroyed 12 Council ships herself, dancing between their weapons with impossible skill. When her main guns ran out of ammunition, she used her missiles. When her missiles ran out, she used her ship itself, ramming an enemy cruiser and barely escaping in a lifeboat before the explosion. Around her, other humans performed similar acts of heroism. Pilots who sacrificed themselves to take out enemy weapons platforms. Engineers who stayed behind to keep shields running while their ships burned around them. Soldiers who charged into enemy vessels with nothing but knives and determination. And slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. The Council ships, crewed by sick soldiers and led by exhausted officers, started to fall apart. Their coordination broke down. Their attacks became scattered. Their retreat became a rout. By the end, over 8,000 Council ships had been destroyed. The rest fled into hyperspace, broken and defeated. The humans had lost 60 ships. Nearly 40,000 lives, but they had won. When it was over, Kate Morrison broadcast a single message to the retreating enemy. That was for everyone you tried to kill. Remember this day. Remember what happens when you underestimate humanity. The battle would become known as the Humbling, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. 1 year had passed since the Council voted to destroy humanity. 1 year of war, death, and suffering. 1 year that had changed the galaxy forever. High Arbiter Vara stood in the great chamber of Nexus Station. The same chamber where he had condemned the human species to extinction. But everything was different now. The chamber had been repaired after Lisa Taylor's attack. The lights were back on. The communication systems worked again. But the 12 platforms that had once held the rulers of the galaxy were empty. Only Vorath remained. And he was in chains. Admiral Grace Mitchell sat in the seat of judgment, the same seat where Vorath had once pronounced death sentences. She was older now, with more gray in her hair and more lines on her face. The war had aged her, but her eyes were still sharp, still strong. Behind her stood the new human council. Captain Kate Morrison, Dr. Emily Park, Commander Jake Rivera, David Cole, the farmer who had become a resistance leader, and dozens of others, men and women who had fought and bled and sacrificed for the survival of their species. The chamber was full of observers, not just humans, but beings from across the galaxy, species that had watched the war with growing amazement, species that had suffered under council rule for centuries, species that had never believed they would see this day. Grace looked at Vorath for a long moment. The creature who had tried to kill her entire species. The leader who had ordered the deaths of billions. The tyrant who had ruled the galaxy through fear. He looked small now, broken. "Do you know why we brought you here?" Grace asked. Vorath's 6 eyes flickered. "To execute me. To show the galaxy what happens to those who threaten humanity." Grace shook her head slowly. "No." Vorath blinked in confusion. "No? We have not brought you here to kill you." Grace stood up and walked down from her platform, her boots clicking against the crystal floor. "We have brought you here to teach you something. Something your species never learned in 3,000 years of ruling the galaxy." She stopped in front of him. Close enough to touch. Mercy. The word hung in the air like something strange and impossible. Vorath stared at her. "I do not understand. We tried to destroy you. We killed your people. We burned your colonies. You have every right to take revenge." Grace smiled, but there was no joy in it. "You are right. We have every right. We could destroy you right now. All of you. Your species, your homeworld, everything you have ever built. We have the weapons. We have the will. Every justification anyone could ever ask for." She reached out and touched the chains around his wrists. "But that is not who we are." With a soft click, the chains fell away. Vorath stumbled back, free for the first time in months. He stared at his wrists, then at Grace, his eyes filled with something he had never felt before. Fear, but also something else. Something he did not have a word for. "You saw our rage," Grace said, her voice echoing through the silent chamber. "You saw our violence, our capacity for war. You saw what we could do when our survival was threatened. And it terrified you. That is why you tried to destroy us. Because you could not imagine any other response." She turned to address the entire chamber. The humans and the aliens and the countless beings watching through screens across the galaxy. But war is not all we are. Violence is not all we know. Every terrible thing we did, every weapon we built, every life we took, it was never about conquest. It was about protection. It was about making sure our children would see tomorrow. She pointed at Vorath. "You wanted to kill 8 billion people. Men and women and children who had never done anything to you. And you did it because you were afraid. Because you looked at the future and saw a threat instead of a possibility." Grace walked back to her platform and stood before it, her back straight and her chin high. "The old council is dissolved. As of today, it no longer exists. In its place, we are building something new. A true federation where every species has a voice. Where no one is lesser or greater. Where the strong protect the weak instead of destroying them. Where no council ever again votes for extinction." She extended her hand toward Vorath. "You can be part of this. All of you can. Not as rulers, but as equals. Not as masters, but as partners. The galaxy does not need tyrants. It needs teachers, builders, healers. Vorath stared at her hand. He could feel the eyes of the entire galaxy on him. His species had ruled through fear for millennia. They had never shown mercy. They had never received a dot, and now a human. A being from a species he had tried to erase from existence was offering him a chance to start again. Slowly, hesitantly, he reached out and took her hand. The chamber erupted in applause. Humans and aliens alike, cheering for something that had never happened before in galactic history. A tyrant brought low. A war ended without genocide. A future built on hope instead of hate. In the months that followed, everything changed. Human diplomats spread across the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as ambassadors. They visited species that had lived in terror of the Council for centuries. They shared their technology, their medicine, their art, their music. Emily Park established the first galactic university where beings from every corner of space could come to learn. Her daughter, now 8 years old, became friends with children of species that had once been enemies. Jake Rivera led the reconstruction of Mars, transforming his underground bunkers into the foundations of the greatest city humanity had ever built. It became a symbol of what was possible when people worked together instead of fighting each other. Captain Kate Morrison became the head of the new peacekeeping force. Her mission was not to punish, but to protect. Ships patrolled the space lanes, watching for pirates and tyrants and anyone who tried to return to the old ways. And David Cole returned to his farm on New Austin. He planted his wheat and raised his children and lived a quiet life. But sometimes, when visitors came from other worlds, he would tell them the story of the farmers who had become soldiers. The ordinary people who had stood up against the impossible. The Galactic Council had sought to eliminate humanity because they feared what humans could destroy. They never imagined what humanity could build. Years later, Vorath came to visit Earth. He had changed. His species had changed. They were no longer tyrants. They were students, learning what it meant to be part of something greater than themselves. Grace Mitchell met him at the spaceport. She was older now, retired from military service, spending her days teaching young officers about strategy and diplomacy. You know, Vorath said, looking at the blue sky and green trees, I still do not understand you. Any other species would have destroyed us, would have burned our worlds, insulted our soil. That is the way of the galaxy, the way it has always been. Grace smiled. Maybe that is why it needed to change. They walked together through a park filled with children playing. Human children, alien children, all of them laughing together, not caring about the differences between them. What drives you? Vorath asked. What makes you fight so hard, sacrifice so much, and then turn around and show mercy to your enemies? Grace thought about the question for a long moment. She thought about her soldiers who had died, her friends who had sacrificed everything, the 18,000 who had fallen in the first battle, the 40,000 who had died in the humbling dot. She thought about her own daughter, grown now, with children of her own. Love, she finally said. That is what drives us. We love our families, our friends, our home, our future. And when you love something that much, you fight to protect it. But you also remember why you are fighting. Not to destroy, not to conquer, but to build a world worth living in. Vorath was silent for a long time. We never had a word for that, he admitted. For love. We had words for power, for fear, for obedience, but not for love. Grace placed her hand on his arm, a gesture of friendship between two beings who had once been mortal enemies. You do now. The sun set over Earth, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in the distance, children laughed. Ships rose into the sky, carrying travelers to distant stars and the galaxy. For the first time in 3,000 years, was at peace, not because anyone was afraid, because, finally, everyone had learned to hope.